Hi, it's Jacob Field here from the High Performance Property Investment Podcast. Today I'm joined by Harry Goldberg. Now, Harry Goldberg is a founder and principal of Purpose Advisory. He has a really interesting story around how he went from private wealth in Westpac Bank to now working more holistically with clients around their life and wealth planning goals and strategic advice at that level. It's an absolute pleasure to have Harry on today. I'm really looking forward to sinking my teeth into today's episode. Thanks for joining us, Harry.
Great to be here.
Very good. That's definitely a radio voice, and you have the TV face, so you're very lucky.
I'll take those as a compliment. You got the radio voice too. It's good.
Hey, Harry. You did start corporate life off, over a decade ago now, and moved into the Westpac premium space. Can you tell me a little bit about how that, corporate experience, the exposure to, the way the world works, I guess, at that finance level, how that's prepared you for this transition into your own business, and give us a high-level overview of what you do day to day now with clients, and why did you make that transition?
Yeah, okay, great. Well, the day-to-day of what we do now is we help our clients make better life and financial decisions. People tend to want someone to just tell them what to do, or they'll try and find answers online and then try and work it out for themselves and then never actually be confident that they're making the right choices. And what I learned while I was in Westpac Premium was the financial advice model while I was there, and this is all before Royal Commission as well, which ended up shutting down BT advice or causing them to sell it off. The model was ultimately, we can help our clients get peace of mind. That's the main thing we're selling officially to the clients. However, really we're providing them with products. And then you can see that because if you get paid by insurance commission, then you're only getting paid when you're selling the insurance product to them. Yeah. If you're getting paid by how much assets you have under management, or at those times as well, implementation fees, like a percentage-based implementation fee of how much money they're investing, then ultimately you're just incentivized to make sure that the client is going to be investing in managed funds, which you're managing. And then at those times as well, you're restricted as to what type of, which products as well as which platforms you're able to recommend to clients. And you can't talk about property. You can't really talk about...
I'll just stop you there, Harry. Why can't you talk about property? Is that because you don't earn a commission, or the company doesn't earn a commission when you do recommend property? Yeah. There's no mechanism about it. So when you say you can't talk about property, that's an internal policy restriction?
Primarily. I mean, look, I think that any financial advisor worth their salt today will be talking about property with their clients. It'd be pretty stupid not to. Most financial advisors have property themselves. It's about how confident a financial advisor feels to be talking about something which doesn't end up in a financial advice document, i.e. like a statement of advice. Yes. Because if it's not ending up in a statement of advice, then it's like, then I can't talk about it. Obviously, myself and Tristan and Jared, we don't have that same hesitation, because we're not going to be putting anything about property in the statement of advice, because we have other avenues that we're able to help our clients with making sure that property is part of their game plan, if it needs to be part of their wealth game plan as well. Yeah. So what I was finding while I was in Westpac, I was actually, if I reflect on the time, this was back in 2016, I was actually really happy in the role. I had an amazing conversion rate. I was selling like crazy. I was convincing myself that the more money that someone pays me means the more that they value me. So therefore, the more value I'm adding. So therefore, I should just be charging as much as possible. And I was actually doing pretty well overall.
It's funny you use the word selling. You're selling like crazy. You're in financial advice space working for a reputable brand, and selling is, I guess, part of the language that you use in expressing your relationship with clients.
Some people refer to it as selling service, and other people refer to it as selling product. But yes, from the language there, we were buddied up with lending, like basically, I've forgotten the name for them, relationship managers in the bank who are working with clients directly, and all of their conversations are obviously about selling. Or service, adding service, but ultimately it's like, hey, what are our sales targets? And so when you're in an organization which pays their staff based on how much revenue they're writing for the company, without a lot of work on value alignment, then you're going to have issues.
It's I mean, it's probably obviously not like this, but all the whole Jordan Belfont Wolf of Wall Street sort of, ringing the bell type sort of conversations come to me. Obviously it's very different to.
We're not Manhattan, thankfully.
No, it's nothing like that. But I can't help but think the Royal Commission happened for a reason, and I think those entrenched cultural issues were there and evident. And I can remember when I was still working in corporate world in Sydney. There was the financial planners, financial advisors. They were sort of fresh out of uni, very young. I don't know what sort of suits you would call them, but they were pretty interesting to say the least. And they were all there, moving in packs down between the Smoko area and the floor that they were working on. And I just thought, why would you have a conversation with these guys about building wealth? But I think that's probably. And we've obviously had a conversation prior to this. I think that could have been probably part of the reason why you moved into your own space, because you are able to look at someone more holistically. You don't have those shackles around sales numbers or, I guess a big corporate putting that pressure on you. Would you say that would be the case? Actually sort of connecting with clients and actually understanding them holistically and giving strong advice based on what is best for them, what generates them wealth, and not what is a sales commission target from a business?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we don't even take insurance commissions either. But there was another step in this journey, because I didn't just switch, right? And the switch happened for me before Royal Commission. I ended up completely unexpectedly at a personal development seminar. It was my wife was really struggling with a manager. Like she had a manager from hell. It was actually quite a terrible situation, and she was really struggling with the manager that she had. And I'm like, well, I know everything, and I'm amazing, because I convinced myself of that at the time. And you're not listening to me, so you got to go and get advice from someone else. And so I don't know where to go. I said, We'll go to this event which is coming up. I'm not going to go on my own to say, I'll come with you, but I'm not going to get anything out of it. I'm just going because I'm a loving husband. I was deluding myself, right? Because I went into this event, and there are a couple things which changed quite considerably. A key part of it was I shifted a belief set from you live and you die, so what's the point? And this whole time while I was referring to the word selling and all of this kind of ego around how many clients I'm able to get on, and how much I'm able to charge, and how much revenue I'm able to write, and how much I'm able to get paid, and the size of my watch, and how nice the car is, and all of those types of things, right? All of the ego of being up at the top of Barangaroo at First Martin Place, and having waiters bring coffee, and the clients are waiting there in the meeting room with a beautiful view, waiting for me to get there. Like this whole power dynamic, all of it.
Wow.
You can understand why I was loving that environment, because I figured, well, you're going to die either way, so who cares? Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
And I shifted that in that moment to life short, make the most of it. And when I realized life short, make the most of it, what does that actually mean? I thought about that. It was a 4-day seminar. I walked out of it. And then I saw other people who had attended the seminar. One person shouting at someone on the phone, and I saw someone else who was a couple who they were bickering about something. Obviously, it brought up some stuff for them. But I'm like, they don't look like they're enjoying themselves. Like this is awesome, and I feel like my life's changing. But am I just going to feel like this for a few weeks and then become like those other people who, as if they never even walked in the first place? And so I needed to accept the presupposition in that belief. The presupposition was, if life's short, I'm going to make the most of it. It means I'm not yet making the most of life. And that's because I didn't learn enough. Like I hadn't been learning from others on how to make the most of life. So maybe I got to get out of my head a little bit and start learning from others. And that's when I started reading books properly, personal development books. But not just reading and going, oh, yes, wonderful. Yeah, perfect. I read a book. Good job, Harry. Well done. No, I'm talking about reading a book, getting to the end of chapter 3 and going, that is a powerful activity. Put the bookmark in, go, great, I'm going to focus on this now. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to make the most out of the time that I've invested and the energy I've invested into learning this. And so a lot of things started changing for me. And people, family, friends, colleagues, even clients started saying, wow, Harry, you're different. you're happier, you're more effective, you're more productive, you're more focused, you're more switched on, you seem smarter, I don't know, but you're definitely healthier. Like, what's going on? Like, can I? And when they were asking that, they're really asking, can I have more of what you've got? And so I realized I started learning how to design my own life. And a lot of it was around value alignment. And I realized that the values that I was espousing, or the values that I held on really tightly towards, or identified with back in, say, mid-2016, were very different to the ones which I was holding in early 2017. And it was at that point where I realized I can't stay. It just doesn't make sense to stay. So I left Westpac with a mentor of mine at the time, went into a business together. I have a lot of respect for him. He actually built me up as an advisor in many ways, and helped me not get too carried away by the ego of it all. We went into business together, but we were definitely value aligned. We weren't objective aligned. The amount of revenue for me wasn't that important. I didn't have kids yet. I no longer really cared about having nice things. He had he had an ongoing renovation, as well as a kid in private school and all these other things, right?
Yes.
And so, and myself and my wife were on double income, no kids, or then single income, no kids. And so for me, the finances weren't that important. I wanted to try new things. Yes. And so we realized it wasn't right to continue in the way that was going, because it just wasn't a healthy relationship. We split very amicably, and then I joined up with Tristan at Purpose Advisory when it was just him at the start. And
Wonderful.
The team's built out to 7 of us, plus a few regular subcontractors.
Well done. That's good.
But when we were diving into Purpose Advisory and really designing what it looks like, we had this vision in mind of 50% life planning or life coaching, and 50% financial advice. And when we dived into that a little bit deeper, we started realizing, okay, right, we've done the life vision, we've done the financial planning, there's something missing. Like, we can't do the financial advice properly for the client unless we do the cash flow first. Okay,
Yeah.
so we go do the cash flow.
That makes
we can't
sense.
then we realized we can't really do the life vision properly unless we understand more about who we are. And we started using personality models with clients, and we got amazing feedback for that as well. And then we realized that every financial advice conversation that we're having with clients, at that stage, everything's still got to financial advice. Every conversation, we were still repeating the same things about investments and different types of investments. So we realized we'll create an education module, and then we'll create a coaching service off the back of that, rather than letting a financial advice conversation go on for 4 hours. We'll keep them both to 2 hours. We'll help someone create their investment philosophy, and then we'll help them with financial advice. And then that investment philosophy started building out too much as well. And so we started making like investment philosophy or wealth philosophy, and then wealth game plan sessions. And we started building amazing content around the cash flow. Tristan created this amazing tool. Mostly Tristan built this amazing tool, which is our money worksheet. The Purpose Advisory money worksheet's incredible to see your incomes, assets, liabilities, cash flow, see your lifestyle expenses, and be able to create a proper budget off the back of it.
Yes.
The life vision, it wasn't enough to just create a vision for the future. We got to make sure we know the milestones as well. And we found that with people, when they were going into life vision, if they didn't understand themselves well enough, then they weren't creating a real ideal life for themselves. They were just creating a life that they were kind of pretty much the same as what they had today. And so,
or they think that they want as well from observing other people, I'm assuming.
Yep, exactly.
We're in an echo chamber of Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, and designing even property portfolios, coming at it from a property perspective, a property portfolio or a strategy based on what others seem to be doing and doing well at, and not stopping to think, well, hang on, will this work for me? Going back to that, I think you've taken the pragmatic approach. You've gone back to the core foundation before you've built it up from there. So, sorry to cut in.
No, that's good. That was a good point as well. I mean, ultimately, when you look at things on social media, for example, most people, if they're active on social media, they'll probably be jealous of their own social media profile. Like if they didn't know that was themselves, they'll probably be jealous of that person as well. Because people aren't posting photos, or people are rarely posting photos of their child screaming in the middle of the night. People are rarely posting photos or videos of the fights that they're having with their spouses. People rarely share what their financial situation is like when it's negative. And when it's positive, even still, they kind of embellish it either way. So you see a very curated image of other people's lives. And more so than just saying like it's an echo chamber, you could take it a step deeper and you could say we have unconscious biases. And unconscious biases aren't just based on what other people are doing. A lot of the time you'll find that when you're talking to people, they don't really care that much about what others are doing. They don't care that much about competing with others. And some people don't even care that much about not sticking up, like not kind of tall poppies, right? Putting their head a little bit too high. Okay, so this is the personality model, right? The personality model will focus on what your base fears and desires are. It's not our own personality model. We use it, we adopt it, we type clients with it. It's by a guy. It was created by a couple named Dave and Shan. It's the Objective Personality System. Amazing tool, amazing resource. But you don't have the 16 types you have in Myers-Briggs, or the 6 in Hexaco or 5 in Big Five. You don't have the 4 categories in DISC, which expand to whatever.
Yes.
You have 9 coins, so this or that. So like tribe or self. Gather or organize, right? Like those types of things.
Yes.
And when you have those 9 coins together, you end up with 512 different types.
Wow.
Way too much for us to dive into deeply here. But here's a key example.
Yes.
You probably know someone in your life who's like this. They're very much focused on what they can do for other people. I got to do this for others. I got to be connected with other people. I got to be able to help. I got to be able to help. I got to be able to help. And they love doing it, right? And it's a beautiful trait for someone to be able to have that. We need all personality types, right? There's nothing wrong with this. But when you keep doing something as your strong suit all the time, it's no longer just a strong suit. It becomes an addiction. And when you ask someone who's like that, and they never get any sleep or anything like that, and you ask them to describe their ideal life in 10 years' time, or their ideal day in 10 years' time. They're like, I wake up really early and I do like a group exercise class, and I speak to other people, and I help the kids get ready for school, and I spend some time with my spouse, and I go to work, and I have team meetings, and I catch up with someone for coffee, and then I do this and this and this and this and this the whole way through, right? And then I go to sleep at midnight and wake up at 5 a.m. again. And that's my ideal day. And so, well, hang on a second. Let's take it a step back and go, is that really what you want, or is that just the way that you're living your life at the moment and convincing yourself it's right because these strong suits are your addictions?
Yeah.
And
that would be a perfect day that is like what you do now, but it's not, potentially a different state or a different evolution.
Exactly. It's not what will your life be in 10 years, it's how do you want your life to really be in 10 years' time. If you could design it the way that you really want it to be. And so the power in doing that for someone like with that example is they go, well, if they've done personality first and they realize that these are their biases and that's their addiction, they'll go, no, actually, you know what? I don't want to keep living the way that I'm living right now. I'm gonna wake up at 6 a.m. instead of 5. I'm going to do some exercise on my own, like go for a run or something. I'm going to do 30 minutes of meditation because I got to get my mind sorted. I'm going to spend time with the people that I'm really close with, like my kids and my spouse, and do some things for the people that I really care about. While I'm also doing the things for myself. I'm going to go into work and I'm going to have blocks of time where no one can interrupt me because that's where I'm going to be most efficient. And yes, I'll catch up with someone for lunch, but that's just because I really enjoy doing that. And then I'm going to prioritize X, Y, and Z or whatever. And then I'm going to make sure that I get to sleep by 11 p.m. or 10 p.m. But I'm reading a book for 30 minutes before I go to sleep every night. And you can see that someone who has that extreme leaning to then be able to go, I'm going to take care of myself and put my oxygen mask on first. It's so powerful. But everyone is depriving themselves of some form of oxygen, right? Everyone. And there are the people who are the complete opposite, where they're way too introverted, and they're like, no, and you know what? In 10 years, my ideal life, I'm going to be really out there. I'm going to be putting out my energy. I'm going to make sure that I'm filling my cup, but at the same time, I'm going to make sure that I'm connecting with more and more people. I'm going to have X number of phone calls a day, and it's going to be really fulfilling. And I'm going to make sure that my health is supporting it, and that I'm really close to the people that I actually care about as well.
Yeah.
And you can have the same types of things with people who are a little bit more organized, as in they want their world to be in a particular way. They're going to try something new. You can see people where they always want to try new things all the time, and they never stick with something or commit to it for long enough. They're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to make sure that I keep doing the same thing again and again for a while. And it's potent when someone's able to see that. Similarly, with quite a few clients, we also look at their money beliefs.
Yes.
When we look at their money beliefs or their money mindset, we're not just looking at their beliefs around money. We're looking at their beliefs about everything else. Because a fundamental perspective that we have when we're looking at the financial well-being of anyone or someone's holistic life situation, you were referring to the term holistic before, is every financial decision you make is going to impact your life. And every life decision you make is going to impact your finances. You might say, no, I'm just my life decision is I want to be able to go on a nice holiday. So great, that's going to cost money. So no. My life decision is that I've got a car which I really like and is reliable. That's going to cost you money. My life decision is that I'm going to spend more time with the people that I care about and therefore less time on work. Well, that's going to impact your career, it's going to impact your finances, or it's going to impact your business, it's going to impact your finances. Every life decision you make is going to impact your finances. And most people will see that and do one of two things. They'll either stick their head in the sand and go, well, I don't care, then money's just not important, and I'm just going to live either way. Or they're going to go, well, the only way I can be happy is when I have lots of money. The only way I can live a life I want is when I have lots of money. And neither of those two things are true, because to both of those, you're giving all of your control away to an asset, which is really just a exchange, part of an exchange. And so when you start to realize that the amount of value you assign to money is also the amount of value you assign to yourself and the people in your life and the things that you want to do, then you realize, well, money is not the only currency. The amount of relationships that you have, like the influence and the social and the political capital, that's a currency. The amount of energy you have, right? Taking care of your body and making sure you're eating the right foods and making sure you're getting enough sleep, those types of things. Having a cold shower, great, right? You can enhance your energy currency. And then, of course, there's the time you have, how you choose to allocate your time. And all of those things can be used together to enhance each other. And that's why when people just focus on finances, or when coaches just focus on life, or when fitness coaches just focus on your fitness, it only enhances that one part of your life. And that's helpful, that's good, right? You need your dream team to have people who are going to build you up in all of these areas of your life, wherever you need it. But ultimately, if you improve the amount of energy you have, you're going to improve the effectiveness and the efficiency of the time which you use. If you improve your efficiency and your time, you're going to be able to find ways to make more money. When you find ways to make more money, you're going to have more influence to create the change and the impact that you want to actually create in your life. These things all interact with each other.
It's, probably just taking things back a step and giving a little bit of context. I guess our typical audience, and I guess in the Ripehouse business, we're looking at investment properties and buying investment properties. We're very focused on property investment. We're very focused on generating wealth from property. We've skipped a lot of steps there. I guess we're only really talking with people who have already made the decision to invest in property. But I think this broader conversation is, for those people that have made that decision to invest in property, it might not actually be a right fit for them. It might not be actually, when they take the broader view of their life and what they want to do, it might not be working for them. It might be actually taking them further away from that holistic picture. Or obviously it could be more applicable as well. So I guess, Harry, does it start with understanding yourself first? So this is obviously a property-centric conversation, or property investment-centric conversation, but it'd be great to focus on this bit before property investment even comes into the picture and really understanding, hang on, let's look at you as a person first. What are your goals? And then second to that, look at different asset classes, and property is obviously in the mix there to see if that asset class will be applicable to what you're trying to do. Is that the right sort of thought process of how we should be looking at this, do you think, Harry? Or?
Yeah, exactly. Look, ideally, with every decision that you make, you start with you. Right? So when we're talking about your mindsets and your beliefs and your personality, you've got to be able to understand who you are. And then you've got to understand what you actually want to do in the world, right? That's where life vision comes in. You've got to understand why are you even doing what you're doing, right? You want to buy an investment property, that's great, cool. For some people, maybe you shouldn't. For some people, you should have 10 investment properties, 20, 100 investment properties, wonderful. It's going to differ for you.
It's really interesting. I mean, obviously, we're talking to clients who've made the decision to invest in property, but it's very surprising the how regularly we do talk to those people who have made that decision who don't have a goal in mind. They are wanting to invest in property just because it sounds like a good idea, or because someone they've talked to at a barbecue suggests you should go and do this, or their accountants told you need to save tax.
Or their parents told them that the share market's too scary.
There's this multitude of reasons, but the first question we would ask them in a property environment would be, well, okay, are you doing this for cash flow or for equity? Are you doing this for lifestyle changes or facilitate that? Or is it part of you're very happy doing what you're doing now? But what is the tangible goal that you are shooting for? Is it X amount of equity or Y amount of cash flow? I mean, we really break it down into two simple variables, but we're going back a step further than that. It's not just about property. It's not just about I want passive income or equity goals and putting a number on it, which a lot of investors, listening now, ask yourself, what is your end game with property? Do you have one or not? It's getting a step earlier than that to what is your life end game?
Yeah, what's your end game for life? Here's a wonderful activity for people who are listening that can do this, right?
Yes.
Imagine, I've heard it from a few different places. The one which resonates with me most is Tony Robbins. He calls it the rocking chair test. Imagine that you're 85 years old and you're sitting on the rocking chair on your front porch of your home and you're watching the world go by. You're watching kids ride by on bicycles, and you're watching people hurry off to work, and you're watching the gardeners curating the lawns, or whatever it is, right? You're just watching the world. And then you look within and you think back about your life. And you think, that was a really successful life. That was an amazing life. I loved my life, and I'm so grateful for the actions that I've taken. I made some mistakes, but overall it's just been exceptional. What would your life have to have looked like in order for you to say that when you're 85 years old? Now, some people listening to this are going to be, I know exactly what that's going to look like, and maybe they've got a good idea. And some people are going to go, that's way too scary to think that because I've got no idea. And what I'll say to both of those people is that's perfectly fine. But what we've found with clients is that vision should change every 1 to 2 years, or maybe even more frequently if you're in a state of flux with, like, if you have kids, or if you get married, or if someone that you love dies, or if you start a personal development journey, or you go on an amazing holiday and something's kind of triggered within you, right? All of those types of things or a health incident or an accident or whatever. Those things can make it happen more often, but usually that vision for what's going to happen when you're on your rocking chair when you're 85 years old is going to change. Similarly, if you think that that's a strange thing to do, then try and write the speech that someone's going to give at your funeral.
I was going to say, write your own eulogy.
Yeah,
it's quite morbid, but it's a great way to reflect and to think about what is important, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, write a letter to yourself for like the you in 10 years' time. Write a letter to yourself saying all the things that's going to stop you from living an amazing life. Work out that. Like, the people don't fit, like, some people love doing these activities. Oh, sorry, I'll rephrase that. Everyone loves having done the activity or getting what they get from the activity.
Yes.
Most people have a positive lens of doing the activity itself. It can be very cathartic, but it can also be very, very challenging, right? Because people don't do this day in, day out. Yeah,
it's very confronting. You've got to have an honest conversation with yourself, which is something that a lot of people don't like to do. Yeah. And I think it's what you're talking about is a deliberate course of action at a set time period. This is a review. It's not it's a health check of yourself from a planning and what is important to you perspective. And I think having that, it's almost sounding like you would put this in your diary and something that you would revisit at regular intervals. Being that deliberate about it, I think, is the takeaway. It's not something that you just sort of fumble through and I'll get to that later, or it's something that is rock solid. And I have sort of been down this journey myself, obviously, to a certain degree, and found it's particularly useful to sort of schedule. It's a little bit difficult with kids, I think, and partners and kids, but schedule a trip away or a weekend away or something where you are separating yourself from my life or whatever, the day to day, so you can have that time to go and pull yourself away. And
you hit the nail on the head there, right? Most people in today's world really struggle with finding the time. And not only is it a challenging task to do, right? Because it's not easy to have to look within. It's not like some people find it easier than others, but for most of us, it can be a very draining experience because you got to look at your flaws. You got to like put all of your crap out there and go, shit. It's like, okay, this don't want. Okay, well, if I'm going to get rid of all those things, what have I actually got to do in order to be able to do that? I've got this pile of junk with me. How am I going to get rid of this junk? And that might be that you've got to change some habits. You've got to put some new habits in. Like I'm guessing a lot of the listeners here are very pragmatic individuals or have a bias towards being pragmatic. I want to take action. I want to do something, right? They've already gotten to the point of reaching out to you and going, I want to buy property. I want to buy an investment property. These are the reasons why I want to buy the investment property. It's because I need to be able to support my cash flow, so I'm able to stop working. Actually, let's rewind. I'll give you a great example. I had a client. This is probably about 2 years ago, but I love this example because it just there have been plenty of examples since, but this just describes it perfectly.
Yes.
He reached out and he said he heard us on a podcast somewhere, and he said, I want to be able to buy an investment property. Right. Great. Why do you want to buy an investment property?
So I can say I have one.
No, for him it was so that he can have another stream of income. I'm like, well, why do you want another stream of income? It's like, so I can stop working. I said, why do you want to stop working? Like, isn't that obvious? I said, not to me, it's not. Why do you want to stop working?
Yeah.
And he says, well, because it's a shitty job and it drains me. I said, what's wrong with doing a shitty job that drains you? He's like, come on, really? I said, yeah. Tell me. The reason for you is going to be different to the reason for me. Why do you want to stop doing a shitty job that drains you? And he says, well, because it just makes me not the person I want to be. How's it making you not the person you want to be? Well, I'm a shitty husband and I'm a cranky dad. And I said, what's wrong with that? It's like, that's not what I want for my life. I said, okay. So is getting an investment property right now, which means taking on more debt to be able to finance it, which means you've got to be able to finance the debt as well. Is that going to make you a better father? Is that going to make you a better spouse?
And potentially in the short term, entrenching yourself to that job for the next 3 to 5 years more so.
Exactly. Exactly. And he in that moment, actually, he kind of broke down into tears. He realized, crap, I'm on the wrong path. Now, about 6 months later, he bought an investment property, right? But he had changed his job. He had re-envisioned the life that he wanted. He learned how to manage his emotions properly. He has a whole toolkit of techniques he's able to use to make sure that when he picks up his kids from school, that he's in a great emotional state. When his kids are starting to cause have some breakouts, one of them has some challenges, and that he's able to keep his cool. That he realized it's actually more important to prioritize his spouse than a bunch of other things. And so he ended up taking care of those things, and then work wasn't that much of a challenge for him, but then he left the job finding something else, as opposed to going, crap, I need to entrench myself in this job, or like, I've just got to grin and bear it, I've got to suffer for my family, which I don't think is helpful. Or he'd jump straight out of that job into another one, and without having looked at himself and his personality and his beliefs and his vision for the future and what he actually wants to be, he'd just end up replicating the exact same situation. And
it's I guess that reason, it's a wonderful sort of example, I guess, of thinking this is going to achieve my goal when it really it could have the opposite impact. And I mean, there's extreme examples of that as well from a property perspective, where I've got from a client perspective on our side of the fence in a property investment business. One particular gentleman, for that reason, for the whole idea of I want an asset that's going to generate income, so then I can, de-wed myself from this job that I don't enjoy. Well, he bought an off-the-plan apartment in Melbourne 10 years ago, and it had taken him, he'd been chipping in out of his pocket every week for 10 years, and it was still in negative equity. It still had, it was still underwater 10 years later, but his income had gradually gone up. He was still, I guess... had shackles on financially for that entire period, and he had just got himself to the point, he couldn't afford to sell the property, he had just got himself to the point where he could afford another investment that would then start getting him backwards. So with my purpose of that is, if you don't have the reason right, the statistics from ABS, I think it's about 78% of people have one investment property. There's a lot of people that don't have an investment property, but of the people that do have an investment property, 78% of them have one, 12% have two, right? So that sort of signifies for me, and it's a very common statistic, and I think it sort of shifts, but that suggests to me that something hasn't worked well if someone gets stuck at one or two investments, or that investment has potentially taken them further away from their goal, and they've got stuck, or they've realised, hang on, this is not working for me, and that for me goes back to the reasons behind it. We know, both of us, I think, are experienced in property investment enough to know when it's done well, it takes people towards their goal if they are very clear on their goal and they do property investment well, but not having an understanding of what they're trying to achieve and how it fits into their broader life. I think that's probably where people run themselves into a lot of trouble. And the statistic is damning. 90% of people have one or two substandard investment properties.
Yeah.
It's coming back to what is driving these people towards doing something that's not working. It's
you'd think if it works, you're going to do a whole lot of it. And there are other ways to invest in property as well, right? Like there are REITs, A-REITs as well. Like you can invest in managed funds which have it. You can attempt to identify yourself as a sophisticated or wholesale investor, and you can gain access to property syndicates and various property trusts, which you're able to invest in. Then you have exposure to other assets which you wouldn't necessarily buy yourself, be able to do, right? So there's a whole bunch of different types of commercial, retail and industrial, and office space as well, which you have access to. And most people only maybe have access to retail commercial if that's what they wanted to do and buy a shop front. And then try and rent it out to businesses. And then you're just so susceptible to what's happening in the market and the economy. And investment property, I think, is incredible. I think that what needs to be done first, though, is you've got to understand the why, have the right why, and have the right strategy. You need your reasons, and you need the right strategy. If you don't have both of those, or if you're missing one of them, it's not going to work well. If you've got the right reasons, but you buy a shitty investment property, okay, good luck to you, right? If you don't have the right reasons to buy property, and then you end up getting one, and then you're trying to manage it, and then it's like, I can't manage it. I'm going to have to pay other people to be able to manage it for me, and then that's taking out of the margin. And on top of that, you're taking additional risk as well. And then you need to be intentional with every financial decision that you make. And to tell you that broader, you need to be intentional with every life decision that you make. Now, there are plenty of good reasons why people should go into investment property, right? It's something tangible. They can see it. It's something they can relate to. It's something where they feel they can add value to it. Maybe they've got, like we've had plenty of clients who are engineers or builders or designers by trade, or architects by trade as well.
Yes.
And they're like, great, I could do this, I could fix it up as well, we can add value to it over time, just as long as the cash flow makes sense. Okay, so let's take a few steps back. So we spoke about who you are, your beliefs, and your personality, and neither of them actually define you. You can overcome all the challenges of both and use the strengths of all of them as well. Then we start looking at your life vision, how you want your life to be. Then we look at the milestones, which is what are the steps you've got to take in order to get there? How much money do you need in order to get there? How many years until you start that business? How much do you need to save up for a runway or something, right? How long until you have that fifth investment property? What are the milestones you got to achieve in your career in order to be able to fund it or finance it? Those types of things, right? After that, though, still, there's another step before you decide to buy an investment property. You got to understand your cash flow. And it's not just chatting with a mortgage broker and finding out your serviceability. And there's issues with that. You've got to look at it completely from a completely unbiased lens. Not speaking to the person who gets paid if you take out the property, or even speaking to the person who really cares about you and wants to make sure that you get the loan for your sake. you gotta be able to look at how much money's coming in, how much money's going out, and to what areas are they going out, and how can I make sure that I either reduce my spending or possibly increase my spending to improve my lifestyle. That's important as well for some people.
Yes.
And how do I create the right frameworks around managing my cash flow properly? So this is the reason why most of our advice clients end up getting some form of cash flow coaching or cash flow advice from us.
Yes.
Because we've got to dive into, these are the areas if we're going to be buying a property, let's just say, forget about investment property for a moment. Let's just say you're going to be buying a home or upgrading your home. Yes. And it's going to cost you an extra 20 grand a year in lifestyle costs, maybe an extra 30 grand a year, right? On top of whatever your current expenses are. Maybe you wipe out your rent and then you're buying the home. You're paying 20, 30K of P&I.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yes, the principal component's a form of saving, but you don't have that saving unless your bank for some reason allows you to continue to endlessly redraw, which is very uncommon.
Yes.
And so let's say that person say, okay, great, I've got the money saved up for the home deposit and I'm going to be buying the home and I'm really looking forward to it. But now we've definitely got more money coming in than what's going out. So how do I invest that money? So, well, hang on a second. You've got the home deposit saved. You've got no cash flows. You've got no emergency fund. You've got no lifestyle savings. Like, you've got no savings for your holiday. You've got you don't have any other money for anything. You're then just going to be relying on the 30K of positive cash flow surplus, right? And so, great, you're in surplus. But let's make sure that we first use that to put you in a proper position, right? You've got to do the foundations first.
Yes.
Like, the great analogy is, if you look at a beautiful tall building, any of the beautiful buildings that are out there, actually any property development that you see which has anything underground, it needs to do form work first. Yes. You've got to dig down, you've got to excavate, you've got to make sure you're putting the right structures in, and you've got to make sure that it's engineered properly. You've got to make sure that those foundations are able to set. You've got to make sure that you've got the right designs even before you start digging in the first place. And that gets through councils and all of that, right? You've got to make sure you do all of that before you even consider building on top of where you've started. And all of that beginning part, it doesn't look like any progress.
You've gone backwards.
You feel like you've gone backwards, down, right?
Yeah,
because you've spent money on doing it. You've been putting in all this effort to be able to dig in. Even that's once you've started, right? Yeah. And you're already backwards financially in order to be able to make that happen. Maybe you're positive on paper, hopefully, that it's appreciated in value just based on the land, but you're still putting all of this effort in to be able to build something up. Yeah. But the longer that you spend on making sure that the foundations are right, the more exceptional the property is going to be. The higher you're able to go, the wider you're able to go, the stronger the build is, the longer it's going to last for.
It's a great analogy.
And so when we look at it from that perspective, well, the other thing you got to do before you get an investment property on your portfolio is you got to make sure your foundations are right. We've been talking a lot about the beliefs and our personality and our vision for the future and our why and what we actually want. And before you actually work out the game plan, you got to make sure that your cash flow is secure as well. That's a really important foundation. Yeah, you've got to make sure that you're really clear on how long your income's going to come through from your career. Like, you look towards the US, how many people have been laid off recently? You look
and you've got the buffers in place, because I mean, investment properties for the long term, it's building wealth slowly. Even though we're looking for strong returns in the short term, it's when you have that compounding over longer periods. But you've got to be able to hold it for those longer periods. You've got buying and selling costs, and what's that? It's going to be maybe 7 or 8, 10% of the property value if you had to buy and sell it within a shorter time frame. That's something you need to avoid, based on not having enough capital to actually service the property, or, as you say, income risk and having to chip things in. It's
swing trading is probably best kept for share markets. Ultimately, share markets, forex, and crypto. That's kind of the place that you should spend your time swing trading, if that's what you want to do. Because then you can get in and out, and you can keep your commissions really nice and low, and you can, as long as you have the right system for yourself, you can make a lot of money in a short period of time, as long as you got the right tax structure as well, which doesn't impact your other aspect, like your other capital gains, which might be discounted, just to make sure that you've got that you've got it segregated in some way or another. That can be really powerful. But you got to understand what you actually want to do and what your game plan is. There's no point in looking at the game plan or the end game of your property or any investment you make unless you understand how it fits into your life. How is it a block for you being able to live the life that you love?
Yeah. I had a conversation. I'm just trying to think of the years. It was when in the last Bitcoin boom. I think it must have been. It was just after COVID, wasn't it? It was 2020. Bitcoin was going through the roof.
Well, 2021 it got to what, 65, 68.
Into 21 it was starting to go through the roof, and I think it must have been at the beginning of 2021. I was having this conversation, and this gentleman, he was in his sort of late 20s, I think, from memory. He had worked really hard to save up a deposit for an investment property, and then he was just about to sort of take that step and start on the process of purchasing investment property, saw what was happening in the crypto market, and then decided to pull it back, put into crypto. Right. And he said he was going to park the money there for a little while and then come back into property investment. And, for me, it was the way that I've traditionally looked at crypto or shorter term investments. As you say, it's trading over a shorter time period, and there's definitely a lot of merit. And you've got to sort of strap yourself in and be able to deal with it emotionally. But that transitioning wealth or returns from one asset class into another and looking at different time frames when you're doing that. I mean, I've always seen property as a longer term time frame where your entry and exit costs are far greater. You're not really buying, as you say, unless you've got a specific flipping or an advanced strategy, you're not really buying investment properties to sell. The idea of not selling an asset. But it's a very valid process of not parking that surplus capital cash flow in an offset account in investment properties, but then putting it into shorter time frame investments like, as you say, other asset classes within property, a fund or an index or a trust or crypto, and then using that to save up the deposit for the next property and then shifting into that asset class. I think that was probably my outcome or conclusion from that conversation with that client is, you've done the hard work. This is the time to now shift into a longer time frame and then build up your next deposit using the shorter time frame asset class, and then shift back across into the long term and just repeat that cycle. Is that concept or that conversation, does that resonate with you, Harry? Is that something that you sort of do day to day with clients, or you've got an alternative viewpoint on that?
No, it's a great point which you're making. Look, you should have assets that are going to be long term. Like it's a no-brainer, and they've got to be assets that support your lifestyle. So literally your home, right? I still struggle to define your home as a lifestyle asset or an investment asset. It's been the key way that I've built my wealth, but I've always seen it as a lifestyle asset. It's a luxury, I guess.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. I mean, we all should have the right to own a home, and
yeah. I don't see it necessarily as a luxury. It's a lifestyle asset. It's a asset which you need, right? Like you might need your car, and that's a lifestyle asset. And there are different cars you're able to purchase, and you're able to be more intelligent with which types of cars that you're buying, right? Like there are in terms of how to
when I say a luxury, put it this way. I mean, using the car analogy, you can buy a $30,000 Toyota, and it's nice and reliable, and it gets you along for the next 10 years, or you could buy a $500,000 Bentley, and that's doing the same tangible thing, but one is a luxury and one is is what you need and not what you want, I guess. With a shelter and a dwelling, what you need is a shelter, so you can potentially rent in a suburb that you live in for $400 a week, but the mortgage repayments in that same suburb, the yield might only be 2 or 3%. The mortgage repayments might be $1,200 a week. So it's the ownership and the structure of that shelter is 3 times the price. So therefore, that's where it's probably not the right word, a luxury, but just because one is far more expensive in some cases, in some suburbs, it's obviously cheaper to own than it is to buy. It's cheaper to buy than it is to rent.
I mean, people tend to spend more on what they have. People tend to value what's theirs more than otherwise, right? Like most people are gonna I mean, maybe some psychologists have debunked this, but what I've found is that people tend to work harder to stop someone taking their money than they will to try and get that same money back from somewhere else. Right? They'll work harder to stop someone stealing $50,000 than they're going to, even if it was less effort, to go and work and get another 50K. It's like, okay, you can take that. It's less effort for me to go and get it somewhere else.
That's a competition or ego thing, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And so most people, when it's their home and when it's their baby, how many people do you know who see their babies and go, it's such a beautiful baby, look everyone, it's an amazing, beautiful baby, and like, okay, that I don't necessarily see that baby as beautiful as what you do, but okay, great, you absolutely love it, and that's beautiful. Most people see the same thing with anything which they own. They'll, when it's their home, they're more likely to do renovations towards it. When it's their home, they're more likely to do another paint job. When it's their home, they're more likely to maintain the garden. When it's theirs, like when it's actually theirs and they have it. And that's you were talking about emotions before and being able to handle emotions with regards to investments. Well, you got to be able to handle your emotions when it comes to your lifestyle assets as well. Like there's this element of being CFO of your own life, or even better, be CEO of your own life. But in the financial aspect, you got to be able to not just justify the financial decisions that you make, but you got to be able to make sure that they're all warranted. You got to make sure that they all make sense. And so when we've been talking about a lot of things. We've been talking about making sure you lay the foundations right before you build up. We've been talking about making sure that you know what you want from your life, your cash flows in order. You were asked, the way we got onto this track, I believe, was because you were talking about like that guy with crypto, for example. You're like, it makes sense to have investment property or property itself as more of a long-term asset. I agree with you there, unless you have the skills to be able to make it a short-term asset. Similarly, when you're talking about other assets like share market or even crypto, if you're aware enough of it, you can apply that as a long-term investment strategy. But just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. And also just because you can try and do it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be great at it either. So that's why people come to you, for example, to get your advice and to get your help around how do I make sure that I'm making this decision properly. That's why people come to us with almost all of their financial decisions that they're trying to make. It's like, I want to make sure that I'm making this decision properly. Can you please help me? And it's just an important point to make. It's like, yes, you can do lots of things that are going to build your wealth in the short term, right? And in the short term, for most people, that's going to be your career. It's going to be how much your employer pays you, or if you're freelancing, how much all of your clients are paying you, or if it's your business, how much your business is earning or being able to generate, or if that business might be even just investing in property, for example, or it might be some service that you're providing. But at the end of the day, like, those are usually the things which are going to give you short-term returns. I know people, and I'm one of those people, who look towards swing trading and volatility trading and momentum trading in Forex and shares to be able to generate quite a beautiful, almost consistent return in the short term. It takes a lot more skill. It takes a lot more focus. It takes a lot more awareness, and it takes more time to be able to, and better mentorship as well, to be able to make sure that you're able to do that. But when you do it properly, great, you can earn your 20% a year quite comfortably. And that can just add on to your other income in the short term. But yeah, it comes to a point where you've got to have some things which are just going to be there forever. Your emergency fund, that should be there forever. You should never have to touch your emergency fund.
And your swing trading, that's a good example where you're trading time because you do have technical skill to learn, and then also to administer and to monitor, and then you have an emotional buy-in as well, where it's very hard to decouple yourself from the ups and downs, I guess, of the market. So there isn't but when you say that you've got a 20% return and it's almost banked in because you've got a formula and a strategy, you've learned a technical skill and you're applying it over and over, and there's no one wins or loses. It's not like customers. You're building a product and then selling it. It is a market, I guess. So
someone's losing.
Someone's losing. Yeah, true. So what you're doing though is you've got your capital. You're earning a 20% return. You're not really leveraging into it. You're not using other people's money in doing so. So that's why I use that concept of it's great to have these these vehicles that you can use to save the next deposit, so you can get into an asset where you can use other people's money. That's sort of how I've structured it. But I mean, we have a conversation very regularly with clients. I mean, when we're working in the property investment space, we do take the time to do a strategic review or analysis of it, and we don't have as many different chess pieces to move around, say, as you, which is doing more high level or holistic concepts. We are talking with clients after they've made the decision to go in property investment. But some of the big things that we do look at are, do you want to buy a principal place of residence? Do you want to, one partner goes part-time or one partner stops working and have a family? How do you want those big chunky lifestyle changes to occur, and in which order? Because I mean, probably a good example is Anna and I. It wasn't until our 6th property did we purchase our first property to live in, right? So the analogy that we were using was, live where you like, which was sort of Rushcutters Bay there in Sydney, and it was an apartment there, really good spot. Not a good place for a family, but we're living where we like and investing where was best, and that was for good, strong returns, capital growth, yield, and that was across Australia where we're doing that. And then when the lifestyle change is happening, so we always dreamed of having the principal place of residence, but for us, to be honest, it did feel like a luxury, having that ability to do a renovation or change the colour of the walls or not put up with rental inspections, and all of these things was actually a luxury to us because we were focused on returns and delayed gratification, I guess. But then, we were then forced to make that shift to a principal place of residence when we had a family or started having a family, because we wanted the stability, and that was that progression. So for us, we had to go down in one direction, which was invest before we could come back in to do the lifestyle or the life change, which was the principal place of residence, have a family, which we decided to link.
And I mean, just then in the language that you're using, right? The one side is a luxury, it's another side that you're feeling forced to do it. For some people, they feel forced, they've got to buy their principal place of residence before they ever get an investment property. For some people, they feel that it's still a luxury to be able to buy your own home when you've got kids. And for some people, they're being able to buy an Uber, being able to just use Uber to get into the city on a Friday night or Saturday night or something is an essential for them. And for other people, it's a luxury. It's like, if I can't handle my time well enough, then that's just an extra cost which I'm paying. You just got to be honest with yourself around what's most important to you and what you actually need, right? And so I love what you shared there, right? Because you're talking about the emotions that come into every decision that we make. And most people think that the investment decisions they're making are not emotional. Even a lot of people who think that getting into crypto just as a sign to skyrocket, they think that they're not getting into an emotional decision. It's definitely emotion. 100% emotion. People who feel like they've just got to sell because they're worried about what's going to happen with the RBA or interest rates or what's going to happen with the US going into recession or whatever. Emotion. Most people, what I found, I'd almost go out to say that almost all people make their decisions based on emotion, and then they justify it with logic. And if you're able to look at the emotional side first and have great awareness of the emotional side, then the logic flows through. Like the logic isn't the thing which needs to justify the emotional decision. The logic is just, okay, great, it's the right thing. How do I do it the right way?
Yes. Yeah. So it's I'd really like to unpack. Would it be possible, Harry, I think if you're able to jump back on again with us at some point, I think it would be very useful to start unpacking this property stuff a little bit more, and maybe even comparing it in more detail to, if this is your situation, then maybe this strategy might work, and these are the things we've got to look out for. I think that would be really useful to unpack that, because there's something here, and I do see this very often of people, I want to buy an investment property. Why? What outcomes do you want, and what goals are you trying to achieve, and what is it going to facilitate? And we haven't got that resilience, because it's been very property centric on our side of the fence around, I guess, the broader question of who they are and what outcomes do they want for their life. And I think maybe we can go into some details as well around different types of properties, because you can be very deliberate about, do you need cash flow, or do you need equity, or do you need short-term equity or long-term equity? I think matching people's outcomes to particular property classes as well. Once you've made the decision for property, I think would be a great secondary conversation if you're willing, Harry.
Tax entities as well. This is a really important conversation because most people don't have access to this type of insight around. Well, if I'm going to make a decision, how do I make sure that's the right decision? Oh wait, how do I know if I'm even thinking along the right lines to be able to make the right decision? You can have all the ingredients that you want for a cake. If you don't know how to apply those ingredients in the right way, you're going to end up with a terrible tasting cake, even if you cook it the exact perfect way, but you put the wrong ingredients in or the wrong amounts. It's not going, it doesn't matter what temperature the oven is. If you don't have the right ingredients, you're going to end up with a pretty shitty cake at the end of it. And so I'll be happy to have another conversation and look more into the practicals and the tangibles, or maybe you get Tristan on to be able to have the conversation.
Yes.
But to kind of to in some ways wrap up the thoughts which I'm sharing here, or just to if someone's stayed with us for how long have we been chatting? An hour or so. If someone's been staying with us for this long and they've been listening to this conversation, I really just want to emphasize it's really important to start with the right foundations to be able to make the right decisions moving forward. And so your right foundations might be your cash flow. You've got to make sure you have the emergency fund. You've got to make sure you got your lifestyle. You've got to know how much you're spending. And if you've got no idea how much you're spending, you've got to make sure you got the right framework. And if you've got the right framework and you know how much you're spending, but it still doesn't make sense, then you've got to understand your emotions around why you're spending. And if you want a particular life, you've got to understand why and who you are to make sure that you live it. Because most people in our society live by this mantra of, once I have that, then I'll be happy. Once this happens, then I'm going to feel good. When I get there, life's going to be great, man.
Or they seem like they're doing a great job, I'm going to copy them or do what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's bloody
and
scary.
It's not until you build the right dream team around you, such as reaching out to you guys, or reaching out to us, or making sure you got a great mortgage broker or solicitor or accountant or whatever. You got to make sure that you got the right people behind you to help you with making the right decisions. And you got to have, that's financial decisions. And similarly, you got to make sure you've got the right mentors around you to make great life decisions as well.
It's a great perspective, Harry, and I think it's if people can just stop and breathe and just think about why are we doing this, and that starts the conversation about the change that they're looking at creating, and then that starts goals and or objectives. I'm just always put the logic lens on things again, but I think that's a very useful process, and that would be a very great takeaway if people could emerge from today. But in terms of, could you talk maybe a little bit about your podcast, Harry, and how people can connect with you there, and even also about Purpose Advisory, and what's the next step to talk to you at Purpose Advisory?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, with the podcast, because you asked about that one first, actually really relevant to the point which I just made about making sure you got the right mentors.
Yes.
Most people can't design the life they want because they feel like the three things that you need to be highly successful, or the three outcomes you need to achieve to be highly successful, are always competing with each other. The need, like the achieving things beyond what others expect of you, but always less than what you expect of yourself, is one. Making sure that you're enjoying the journey and finding a lot of joy and love and all beautiful emotions throughout life, and then being able to have a positive impact in the world. And that, when I say in the world, it doesn't mean you make the world a better place or whatever. It means that you can, maybe if it's just improving the life of your spouse or your parents or your kids, or maybe it means your community, or maybe you broaden it out and it's your clients and how you're able to improve people's lives there. Or maybe it's literally creating something that's literally going to change the world, whatever it is. Whenever you look towards an exceptional person, they have all three of those and they've done all three well. And when you're trying to learn how to balance those out, I mean, most people don't even have the conversation of trying to work out how to balance it all out. And so they wait until they're in their 40s or 50s or 60s until they actually learn, oh, I shouldn't just be pursuing financial success or achieving all these things. I've got to be able to enjoy the journey along the way as well. Maybe there's a way that I can do really well and enjoy it at the same time and have a positive impact too. Like maybe my life can mean something both for me and for the other and for others around me and for the world. Like maybe I can do something like that. Well, the podcast interviews people who live exceptional lives, at least in their area of expertise or in their field. And what's quite unique about the podcast is it focuses on people's journey. Where did they start? Why did they make the key decisions? How did they learn that particular lesson? What do they wish that they could teach others?
Yeah.
And so that's called Success with Purpose. It's a really cool podcast. So if people enjoy this type of chat that we've had, they're going to enjoy all those conversations as well. And you can find it wherever you listen to podcasts or YouTube as well, if you want to watch.
Beautiful.
When you're talking about purpose advisory, I mean, everything which I'll be talking to you about today, that's what we do with our clients. And we start every conversation, even when clients are just looking for financial advice, right? Like, let's say that someone's listening to this and they've already got their investment properties and they're really happy with their investment property strategy and they know how much they're allocating per annum towards it, as well as saving for the next property and those types of things as well. They're like, you know what? My super's never touched property and I don't want to set up an SMSF. I don't want to have to handle it. I haven't got my insurances sorted. What's going on with that? Or I want to make sure I'm also saving for my kids external to the investment properties because, I don't know, maybe they say I'd never want to have to sell the property, but I want to be able to make sure I'm looking after the family. Or maybe they've got their investment properties and they want to work out what should they actually do with their home. Are they forced to make a decision, or is it luxury? Or does one spouse feel like they're forced to and the other spouse feels like it's a luxury that they really shouldn't do? Like those types of things, reach out to us. Like we want to be able to help. If someone's listening to this conversation, they're thinking, damn, those are some good questions that those two guys raised. Like, what do I actually want from my life? Like, what's my why? And what's my purpose? And what's enough for me? Right? What will be enough in my life that I'm actually going to be feeling successful and feeling like I've made an exceptional, that I've become a great example to my kids and to my family, and that I'm the type of person that I wish that I could be. If it's any of those things, come through to us. We're going to help you out, because we start off with just book in for an intro call and then we'll have a chat. But with most of our clients, even the advice clients, with the first step of the process is focusing on a life and financial audit, where we're going to run through what's your current situation, what are your goals, what are your life satisfaction areas in all the different areas of your life, what do you actually want to achieve in your world and for you moving forward, and what's your financial situation like, right? Like that Purpose Advisory Money worksheet I was referring to, that's a very effective tool. We introduced it at the beginning there as well. And that is one of our most game-changing sessions, because we know that because while a lot of people engage with services a week later or a year later or a few years later, right? That's perfectly fine. There are plenty of people who engage with that and then they've got the answers that they need. They've like the burning issue that's in front of them. It's sorted, and then they can work out where to from here. Because if you can unload the big stress, like the big problem which you have, right? Like the massive one, like do we have kids or don't we have kids? Or do we do private school or don't we do private school? Or do we help our parents out with their nursing home or not? Like do we stay in Australia? Do we move somewhere else? All those types of questions we dive deep into in that conversation, because if that is where your mind is always focusing the whole time, then you're not going to be able to see the bigger picture. So if you can just simply address that one thing, put it to the side, and then you spend the rest of the time looking towards the future and what you actually want from your life, it's a really powerful experience that I just wish that more people would engage with.
I think it sounds very good, Harry, and I think if it gives people clarity, then I think that's a huge thing that, it stops people just one foot after the other. I think stopping and actually having that audit, I think, is very important. But love your work there, sir. It's been an absolute privilege and pleasure, and I look forward to getting you back on to really drill down further in terms of property, and how that can really sit in with one of these plans or audits, and how it can offer different types of benefits. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.